the book of Habakkuk, chapter 2, verse 6, in the NLT. But soon their captors will taunt them. They will mock them, saying, "What sorrow awaits you, thieves? Now you will get what you deserve. You've become rich by extortion, but how much longer can this go on?" Okay, first and foremost, I'd like to give infinite honors and prayers to Yahweh, by Hashem Yahweh Shai, by Hashem Hakwadash. Double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone, and salutation to the Akims that's pushing the truth and sincerity. Lord willing, this video will be edifying first and foremost to the whole elect, then to those that cleave to the body. And this lesson will be about, as you can read here, it says the U.S. Treasury will have to borrow $2 trillion this year, 2026, just to continue functioning, more than $166 billion every month. But just to continue functioning, all right, you'll have the Treasury, okay, which we'll deal with, who controls that, okay. We'll have to just borrow that $2 trillion this year to continue functioning, all right. And the functioning costs, which I'll read, all right, when you get it, the function is to basically keep America running, all right. You look up who is the Treasury, who is the U.S. Treasury. Okay, it ain't a person, but the Treasurer of the United States. All right, the Department of Treasury, who serves as a trustee of the federal government's collateral assessments and a supervisor of the department currency and coinage production functions. All right, so this is the appointed person or people or collection of people, okay, that basically heads the financial state and and aids the people, all right, that actually needs the help with the money, all right. But essentially, okay, those who keep the poor living, all right, because if obviously, if they draw back their money or whatever the case, then the poor die overnight, all right, because they sustain certain things, right. So and what I want to get here before we get started, all right, this could be a short lesson, but what I want to get here is who first I want to get, what does it means? You know what? Look at this. All right. Okay, let's look here. I just looked this up here, and it says whenever they want to come. All right, and just a AI overview. All right, and it reads on a Google internet, it just says something different. It says the U.S. Treasury borrowing $2 million in 2026 means the federal government is spending roughly $166 billion more per month than it collect in taxes, requiring it to borrow money to pay for mandatory obligations like Social Security, Medicare, and interest on national debt. This signifies a widening budget deficit, with total borrowing expected to add to the roughly 39 trillion national debt. And right now, where you gonna borrow from? All right, when you thinking of borrowing to function, right? Who is the U.S. Treasury borrowing from? Right, the federal government, and who heads the federal government? All right, it says the deficit spending, the government expenditures exceeds its revenue. As of May 2026, the deficit is roughly 6% GDP, double the 3% targeted favored by many policymakers. Okay, let me go down because I was looking for something. On the phone, it says high cost of interest. It says borrowing to function that I have this pulled up on another phone. All right, where it says high interest costs. It says borrowing to function The Treasury isn't borrowing to invest in new projects, right? To expand, to make, another avenue to create revenue. It says, but to pay for existing obligations, right? That's why I started off. Obviously, I read it in the NLT, but it says, woe to him, all right, that lettered himself with thick clay, which is debt, all right? And, these people have been the people who charge entrance, all right, in the houses. The tabernacles of bribery just makes up these, ruling elites, all right? Their taxes have essentially backfired on them, all right? Now, what I mean by that is, all right, because they, the elites run America, all right, and they ditching a dollar, and what's done is done over here, but it's all in the plans of the Lord. But ultimately, I'll say this, all right, they're collapsing it due to the fact of the NWO, the new way, the new digital currency, these things, right? So they run a debt up, all right, so it's basically unsustainable, and you can't pay it. Okay, so now what they'll say is borrowing to function. The Treasury isn't borrowing to invest in new projects, but to pay for existing obligation, effectively issuing new debt just to pay interest on old debt. So, and when you pay interest on something, all right, you never actually pays towards the principal of the debt. All right, the interest was a way that the elites, conquered lands. They coveted houses, different things off interest. Rabbi Finkelstein said, the interest, is all about the interest on the shekels. All right, it ain't really what you borrowed. It's about what you have to pay back before you even start to pay back towards the principal, which leaves you with an obligation to where you're in a debt. All right, contract, mortgage, all these things consist of debt. All right, to where you basically can't get out of it. All right, you cash the check your ass can't cash. All right, you signed a check that your ass can't cash. All right, so now that new debt becomes you, as it'll explain. The high cost of interest payments on the debt are rising rapidly, with reports suggesting they non-rival defense or educational spending taking up a significant portion of the borrowed funds. Okay, so the national debt is projected to rise as well, and it's on an unsustainable trajectory. When you look at it, it says sustainability concerns. Borrowing over $2 trillion annually for 2026 and beyond is considered unsustainable by many analysis, with debt nearing $39 trillion. Okay. It says the operational necessities. The borrowing is for new initiatives, but to continue functioning to meet legal obligations, including federal salaries, social programs, and interest on existing debt. All right. So you can't keep where you keep borrowing from. Right. If you keep on inflating, you're just putting more money circulating out. Right. That's just inflation. Okay. The money, again, is not backed up by anything. Okay. Because you can't, they're already struggling to borrow, they already struggling to manage their own existing debt obligations. So they what you borrowing from if you're already in debt? All right. If you're already in a negative, you can't go and get something out of the negative. You see? All right. Now I'll look at this one as well. So I also put in who does they borrow from? It says the U.S. Treasury borrows money by selling securities. So those are social securities, and that's why we always say you are a token of debt. The you is a person. That's why all of us have security bonds on us. All right, that's what a social security is. It's a bond. It says by selling securities, bills, notes, and bonds to a diverse mix of domestic and foreign investors. Who in the hell buying these bonds? All right, of millions of people, right, or billions of people, and including foreign governments, the Federal Reserve, private investors. Who are these private investors? Banks and other government agencies. Now, we know the banking elites are the people who what? Control the money. All right, so the people that control the money has inflated the money to where debt has ultimately taken this course of with interest, and now you can't, it's no paying it back. So now the people becomes the debt. You see? Now, so that means you have to get paid back. All right, I'm gonna go to that James 5:2 as well. Let me. This interest. Pull this up real quick. This is Job. Oh, this one too. Well gotten. It's Proverbs. Salaki. Is it 13 and 12 or 12 and 13? It's 12 and 13 and 11. Salaki. It says, well gotten by vanity shall be diminished, right? But he that gathereth by labor shall increase, but that well gotten by vanity shall be diminished. All right, and that's what you're saying. All right. It's quickly disappearing because of the tabernacles of bribery in Job 15 and 34. Let me get that real quick. These are the same people that covered their land. So what they did was put America in debt, all right, to where they can't escape it, overall. Because again, their whole enterprise was to run it up over as much as they can, all right. And now that has came to fruition, and now it's time to what? Blow this whole thing up, all right. They done got all they could get out of the trap house. It says, for the congregation of hypocrites, Job 15 and 34, shall be desolate, and fire shall consume the tabernacles of bribery. All right. Because money is going towards heaven. All right. It's inflated. It's flying out. There's nothing left. Okay. It says, for the godless are barren. Their homes enriched through bribery will burn. Remember, they covered fields. All right. And the things that'll bring more money. All right. It says, verse 35, they conceive mischief and bring forth vanity, in their belly prepare deceit. Right. Their minds and their hearts prepare deceit of this bribery, man. They done bribed the other nations, and now, ain't nobody want to deal with them no more. All right. Through IOUs, and promises to pay. And now these other nations, the debt just don't got outrate. And remember, the people is the debt. All right. This is what you got to think about, because these Federal Reserve notes, okay, it was is a token of debt when you look on the money. All right. But what it backs it up is these social securities, which goes to who? The people. All right. Ultimately. All right. It says as of 2025, 2026, federal holders account for roughly 1/3, 9.1 trillion of the public debt, while the rest is held by domestic entities. All right. A key contributor of the U.S. Treasury, foreign governments, what the hell, right? And investors. As of December 2025, major foreign holders include Japan, the United Kingdom, and China. All right. And that's why you see China buying up a lot of these ACM movie theaters. All right. You see a lot of businesses being taken over. All right. By China, because of, they done sold a lot of the debt people onto what? Onto China. All right. A lot of the national debt. All right. I think China is a big stakeholder in it. All right. It says the Federal Reserve, the U.S. Central Bank, purchases treasury securities to manage the money supply and interest rate. Domestic private investors and institutes, everything is private. Central bank, elite, these people who are like, what the hell? Who's the federal government? Okay? It says domestic private investors and institutions. This includes mutual funds, pension funds, insurance companies, and commercial banks. All right, but no names. Just they're giving you just entities. U.S. state and local governments. These entities invest surplus funds in treasury securities, intergovernmental holdings. The federal government borrows from itself. But well, who enriched them? Like how they get their money. All right, you see? So the federal government borrows from itself. That's the point. Specifically from trust funds like Social Security and Medicare. Okay, how does the Treasury borrows? The Treasury does not take out bank loans, but rather issue marketable security, treasury bonds, notes, bills, and tips through auctions. These are considered safe investment because they are backed by the full faith and credit of the U.S. government. And the credit is gone. All right, because credit goes back to trust. So nobody trusts this devil to borrow any goddamn thing. All right, so the main banking elites are borrowing from themselves, which lets you know they're in total control of everything. Let me get this and get out of here, man. Well, I ain't intend for this to be that long. This is James 5:1. And the name of it is misuse of riches. Which is fitting. Get back to this. Salak, I got to read a little bit of this article. Salaki. You know what? I'll hold it. It says, the U.S. Treasury will, I'll spot read this, will likely have borrowed more than $2 trillion by the end of the fiscal year, according to the latest estimates of the Executive Office of the President, a figure described as beyond scary by budget hawks. All right, people keep up, with the financial state, of the United States and other places, obviously. All right, the people that's borrowing from themselves is basically telling you, all right, it's getting scary. They're not gonna be able to borrow from themselves no more. It says yesterday the department headed by Scott Bessent released its latest quarterly funding documents, which communicate any changes in debt management policy as well as financing estimates from Treasury and bond market participants. The documents also shall bind issuance plans. All right. Yada yada. Yeah, it says the presentation showed that as of April 2026, which was last month, the Office of Management and Budget, or OMB, expected the 2026 fiscal year to run at a deficit of $2.6 trillion, higher than estimates from the Congressional Budget Office, CBO. Okay, the federal fiscal year will end on September 30th, with the OMB projecting deficit of $2.7 trillion for the fiscal year of 2027. This means that for every month of the current fiscal year, the government will have issued more than $166 billion in debt. From October, that averages will increase to approximately $181 billion a month. Now, just cold word for they got to get rid of the money, man. All right, they need a whole new digital. They just need a whole new currency. All right, because the debt is basically, it done pledged itself so high to where there's no recovering from it. It says the CBO, by comparison, had estimated a deficit of $1.85 trillion for the current fiscal year and $189 trillion for the next year. All right. It says it comes as a national debt being added to month after month, creeps closer to the 39 trillion mark. At the end of the writing, the U.S. national debt sits at 38.91 trillion per Treasury data. Okay, the interest payments on the debt are now so huge they rival government spending on both education and defense combined. And they pour a lot of money into defense, in the educational system. Okay, but it's rivaling now the debt. It says the CBO's preliminary estimates released last month show the Treasury paid out nearly $530 billion on service payments between October 25, when the fiscal year starts, and March 2026. This equates to more than $88 billion in interest payments a month or more than 22 billion a week. And there you go. Right? The 2 trillion deficits used to be unheard of, and they only occurred during major recessions, right? And we're in a recession, right? Just because you're going to work, prices spike and you still can eat here, we're in a soft recession, right? Just gonna hit hard when something happens majorly. And to let you know, it's gonna hit rock bottom, to let you know you was already in it. You ain't easing into it, all right? It says it's beyond scary that 2 trillion deficits are now the norm. You see, I think this called, is it quantum easing? Yeah, it's quantitative easing. It's like a monetary policy tool used by central banks to stimulate the economy by purchasing security and increasing the money supply. All right. So, but it's hard to do that when you're already in debt and you paying back interest on the debt. On what are you borrowing? It is designed to stimulate borrowing and investment, typically used during recession or high deflation risks. You see? And everything is high now. It says it's beyond scary. Okay, I read that. Said Maya McGinnis, president of the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget. Markets will only tolerate our unsustainable borrowing for so long. The risk of a fiscal crisis gets higher as the day passes. We need deficit reduction urgently. All right. So without the quantitative easing, right, to kind of reverse the long-term interest rating, okay, and you kind of cut it, through, and you kind of do, work a reverse out to where you can kind of put money back into the economy. It's just, it's like having drains, all right, and the drains just all clogged up, all right. You got to do so much digging out, then you got to put in a the Drano and different things to kind of clean it out. The nature, like, it's just basically we basically done. All right. Okay, let me see if they got anything else. Yeah, it says trust the, I'm a spot read, doesn't collapse overnight. It slips incrementally until the terms of which the United States borrow, invest, and leads begin to change. This debate still strikes most Americans as abstract. It is anything but. Higher debt, if mismanaged, which the keepers of the house have, means higher, and that was intentionally done, means higher interest rates on mortgage and business loans, right? And you can't just keep getting a loan without paying it. All right. That's anywhere. Okay. And then when you get in these loans, you barely can afford the interest. That way you'll never pay towards the principal. Right? It says it can shift resources away from investments in our national future towards paying for the past at a time when global competition with China is accelerating. That's right. So we decelerating, all right? 3% deficit target. All right, that's kind of it there. Let me read this, all right? James 5:1. It says the misuses of riches. That's what has happened, all right? Go to now, ye rich men, weep and howl for your miseries that shall come upon you. Your riches are corrupted and your garments are moth-eaten. And again, this was strategically done by the main banking families, the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, all right? Those big wigs of the house, all right? That are, that's running these governments, okay? It says, your gold and silver is cankered, and the rust of them shall be a witness against you, and shall eat your flesh as it were with fire. Ye have reaped treasures together for the last days. All right. So, we in those last days. All right. And they got to rush they rollout, the digital currency and other things. So they got to inflate this money, blow it up. All right. Try to come in with a new monetary, movement. But hey, at the end of the day, all right, your RFN notes and, your FRN notes, and in your bonds and your securities, you know, the Lord gonna make, you know, have all made those things insecure, man. All right, to where you ain't gonna be able to lean on them, and they gonna basically the riches you gobble down, you gonna have to vomit them up, man, and that's what's happening. All right, so the Lord is causing all this to, you know, be a witness against you, man, and you know, Adawan Ratazah, you know, the Lord speed up these days, man, for the elect's sake. All right, that, you know, we could get up out of here. So that pretty much was the point. You know, I kind of got long on. I wanted to be short, but through the spirit, it led to what it led to. So, but anyways, I don't want to write this out. It was edifying, man. Till next time, I see Shalom.